The name of the book is WTC for World Trade Center, in their own words, edited by Harvey Eisner, who is the editor of Firehouse Magazine. Harvey, welcome to News Talk Online on the Pal Talk News Network.
Thank you.
This was almost for you a labor of love, wasn't it, writing and editing this book?
Yes, when I first heard the stories of the firefighters that had responded, I knew that they were amazing, and in the past I had written many major stories about fires, explosions, major incidents around the country. So I started taking notes, and I started hearing stories, and I kept those notes for almost 10 years. And in the initial 13 months, we ran 65 interviews in Firehouse Magazine. And in the last 10 months, give or take here, from December 2010, I actually interviewed 40 more firefighters. So those stories with the original stories were combined, and we came out with a 276-page book.
You know, this book is kind of interesting. It really wasn't what I expected it to be, to tell you the truth, because it's really more an historical account from a point of view of the firefighters who actually were there responding on 9/11 and returning in the days and weeks and months after. And it kind of gives a little bit of a different perspective than the one that the general public has seen thus far.
Yes, in my foreword I had written that if somebody wanted to know 30 or 100 years from now a little bit of what happened, they could read this book and get a very good idea of what the firefighters had to go through that day.
And even in reflection, I know you went back and re-interviewed a number of people. It's still it cuts very deep still to anybody who responded that day.
The firefighters did suffer. You know, many were injured, many were killed. Many of them, I talked to a firefighter last night, and he said it still bothers him. So the department wanted him to talk about it, and he did talk to somebody about it recently, and he said it just bothered him to talk about it. He told the person that was interviewing him just those facts.
Yeah. What do we learn from this book, from the eyes of the firefighters?
Well, I think they tell anybody that doesn't know anything about it, and remember, there's many of the firefighters in the FDNY today that were still in school, junior high, high school. They weren't even old enough to be firefighters, and they're on the department now. So it tells them a little bit of what happened that day, what the firefighters saw, what the hazards they had to face, the decisions they had to make, and all that reflects now 10 years later, and some of them are still affected by it today.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that it's almost required reading for anybody in the FDNY. It's almost required reading probably for any firefighter, volunteer or paid, anywhere in the nation. But what about to the general public? What kind of read is it to them?
Anybody that will read this book will get a great understanding of what happened that day. They'll hear the stories, they'll see and hear things, the pictures that are in the book. They'll understand those things that they never saw before. Most of these stories are untold. Most of these stories never were passed on. Several of the firefighters I talked to told me that I was the only one that they ever told these stories to, or the second person they told these stories to. And many of them will find out, for even the pictures, many of them were never published. So the interviews and the photos will show them things, and they'll be able to understand. And also there's a video that's included with the book. So not only can they see the pictures, they can read the stories, they can see it in real time with the DVD that's included in the book as a bonus.
You know, actually for me, as someone who was there reporting as the towers came down live on the air, it was difficult not so much reading the book as it was looking at the videos. Because looking at the videos, you almost relive it, and you relive it in a more intimate fashion than I did. I was standing afar watching it was horrific enough, but to be right there, you know, in the ash with your brothers dying and civilians that you went there to save dying. One of the shots in the video really struck me. It was shot from inside a fire truck, outside a little window of the fire truck. The only thing protecting the firefighters inside from the calamity around them. And it was like, oh my God, only a firefighter could get this up close and personal. And only through this video do we really now get a perspective of what really happened there on the ground.
Well, that video photographer that took the video, of course, he had to escape into a fire truck, and he was inside when that dust cloud went by. So when you see the video, you will see the dust cloud and dark, dismal area outside of the fire truck in the street, where it was a beautiful sunny day. There was not even a cloud in the sky. And here it is today, 10 years later, when the officials say, oh, we don't know if the cancer is related to the dust and the smoke and everything else. Well, here it brings you, like you said, intimately right there, and it shows the conditions seconds after the collapse.
Does it bother you, as the longtime editor of Firehouse Magazine and a longtime firefighter and fire chief here in New Jersey, does it bother you that we're still not accepting of the fact that people who have cancers, who were there, unfortunately became ill as a result of their service to our community?
Yes, I believe that, the figures will show over time. We had Dr. Prezant, who's the FDNY medical officer, do a presentation for us recently in Baltimore at our Firehouse Expo, and many of the things that he's coming up with in a 10-year report after 9/11 will reflect some of these abnormalities, as you would say, of these conditions that the first responders are facing. So I'm not a doctor, but I know that, I think everybody really says it and the officials aren't saying it, but this is the real true condition, the way I understand it.
And, there was a big story that broke just after 9/11 that kind of has gone by the wayside. It had to do with the communications. Now, I could tell you from my own experience, because I was standing there listening to the scanner. The cops had communications. There was a moment where the firefighters didn't. And for me, maybe one of the most horrific things I heard on the radio was the chopper pilot from the cops. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Tower 1 is about to collapse. This is after Tower 2 already collapsed. Tower 1 is about to collapse. Have all members evacuate. The tones went out over the police frequency, told all the members of the police department. That was never communicated to the firefighters. Whether they would have left or not with civilians still in is a secondary question, but they weren't given that choice. Has that been resolved?
I think they're working on it, but as in some of the stories in my book, I interviewed firefighters that made it up to the 35th floor. So some of them did receive that report, and some of them did not. But when they were given the order to retreat, they did and had to go down the stairs. Now, one of the firefighters was in the stairway, and he heard a boom, 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 and he didn't know what that was. And he told me later that it was the police jumping from landing to landing. They weren't even stepping on the steps. They were jumping from landing to landing.
To get out.
To get out. So the people, when they are on their way out of the building in the stairways, they had to take a step, stop. Step, stop, because there were people in front of them, and there was more people getting on the stairways as they went down. So they just couldn't, in 3 seconds be out of the building. It took minutes and minutes and minutes to come out of that building, even when they got the order. One of the other stories, firefighter was stopped with a brother firefighter from the same company, and he had chest pains. EMS had given them oxygen. They said they would be right back. They couldn't wait any longer, and they heard the order to evacuate. They went into the stairway, and there was about 25 firefighters passing them on their way up. And he said, hey, didn't you hear the order to evacuate? And they thought he was crazy. But he was able to turn a lot of those firefighters around, and they started down. And
If he hadn't had chest pains, those firefighters probably would have died.
Well, they probably would have been further up in the building. Other members of his company were further up in the building, and they died. But the point was that he was able to turn those firefighters around and start them down. But again, it was step, step, stop. They just weren't able to just rush right out because there was nobody in front of them. There were a lot of people in front of them.
And plus, they're weighted down with a lot of equipment.
Right. A
Harvey,
lot of that gear was jettisoned so they could get out faster.
Yeah. Harvey Eisner, the editor of Firehouse Magazine, the book is WTC in their own words. I recommend that everybody read it. I guess you can go to firehouse.com to purchase the book?
Yes, you can go to www.firehouse.com/WTC book to purchase it, or 1-800-547-7377, extension 1768.